End of.
Yes, but
that's
not
the way
of British
democracy.
people.
That's the way democracy rolls.
Yeah.
When there's a majority,
Kevin,
that's the result.
You're not acknowledging. You're not.
Thank you. Thank you.
I tell you what, if you're playing to that lot for your support, you're in dire trouble.
Let's see what Joel and Kevin have to say about the reappraisal of 200 statues and memorials attached to the slave trade. Let's take a look.
Break it down.
But let's talk about this nonsense about the 200 statues, roads and buildings with links to the slave trade.
Objective journalism at its finest.
Loads under review. Already statues are being covered up. And among the villains in Mark Drakeford's crazy world are Sir Francis Drake and Lord Nelson, with Winston Churchill pending. What's wrong with this bloke?
You've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
My name is Joel Williams, and I'm a student and aspiring politician.
Well, Kev, I think, firstly, that reasonable people in Wales, and I have to say that's probably the majority of people, differed to Mark Drakeford, will be quite pleased that Nelson's column isn't, in fact, in Wales, it is in England, because we know that if it was in Wales, it's likely that Mark Drakeford would shut it down.
Any evidence for his speculative claim, I wonder?
That would be a great shame. And, one of the things that I think is really important is that we acknowledge that there are over 40 million slaves across the world as you and I speak this evening.
I think we have a critic.
And we have a personal and collective responsibility to do something about it. Now, Mr. Drakeford is very keen to talk about the past, and I have no problem talking about the past. I think it's very important that our children and future generations remain informed.
I wonder if he's got any suggestions.
But what is completely absurd is that we've got Welsh Labour seeking to eradicate and erase history.
What parts?
It's unacceptable, Kev, and we can't let it happen.
So why do you have such a problem with the mere mention of certain parts then?
This guy Drakeford, though, seems to be turning Wales into the sort of communist Republic of Wales or something.
Absurdly speculative claim.
I mean, the other people that we've got, Sir Francis Drake, Lord Nelson, the Duke of Wellington, William Gladstone, all are already on the blacklist.
Okay, let's review those four figures. Firstly, Lord Nelson, in his early life, a pirate in defending the British and capital interests of the Caribbean during the 7 Years' War, and then with the lead up to the American Revolution. Wellington, a decorated admiral. As one historian put it,
he was pretty unkind to his men, and he regarded them. He said he thought they were the scum of the earth.
And also was a key factor in the British subjugation of the Indian continent. Another pirate, Francis Drake, rewarded by Queen Elizabeth, creating the trade links between the new colonies in America and the goods and spoils to the British Crown. And finally is James Gladstone, our former Prime Minister, whose grandfather and father both owned slaves, and whose father was the biggest beneficiary of the compensation after the abolition of the slave trade, and also was a massive part in indenturing Indians to Barbados and British Guyana after the abolition of the slave trade. There you go, context.
And the document describes former Prime Minister Winston Churchill as, and I quote, a person of interest, as if he's some sort of pending criminal.
I want him dead. I want his family dead. I want his house burnt to the ground.
I mean, doesn't Drakeford think that this is all... Well, he clearly thinks it's a great idea. Why doesn't he realise it just makes him look a bit absurd?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Well, I think what is particularly concerning to many people in Wales, and particularly in Cardiff North, Kev, where I'm standing for election to the Senedd next May.
If you want to eat chickpeas and rice for the next 7 days, be my guest.
Is that they're sick and tired of being socialist guinea pigs.
I'm surprised he's not mentioned Jeremy Corbyn yet.
And, Jeremy Corbyn is gone in England.
There it is.
But he is fighting strong in Mark Drakeford here in Wales. Welsh people have had enough, and they can't wait to get rid of Mark Drakeford in next May.
What an extraordinary claim.
Election and have some change.
Change to a poorly performing Conservative Party.
Yeah, because let's not forget, lest we forget...
a little World War I reference there.
Mark Drakeford's friend and political hero is Jeremy Corbyn, which basically says it all, doesn't it?
That seemed like a totally balanced and well-minded assessment there.
Absolutely. So I think Mark Drakeford was one of the first senior Labour politicians to come out and endorse Jeremy Corbyn back in 2015. And, I think people can't forget that. We know that we have got a Welsh Labour government that are failing to prioritise businesses, livelihoods, people's jobs. They're also failing to look after our cancer patients here in Wales. There are many questions that need answers. And what is quite clear is that Welsh Labour refuse to answer the questions that we know they need to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk about this sort of the 200 blacklist of monuments and roads and pubs, etc., because it seems to me that at this critical time, this is the last thing that Drakeford and his henchmen should be worrying about. They've got far more important things to worry about.
What Kevin and Joel were doing there is fueling or leaning into the culture war. As bad faith actors, in this case, on behalf of Rupert Murdoch and News Corp. It's interesting to me how people who will minimise the history and capital benefit gained through slavery and the labours of black and brown people will be the same people demanding to preserve the triumphs of their white counterparts.
Break it down.